Surrender is a repeating process. I want to kind of dive in further. I think just a month or so ago, I talked a little bit about redefining surrender as not a white flag, throw it in the air situation, but as truly a process that involves God. And I think I want to just, you know, pull back the curtains on that a little bit more in a slightly different way. And I want to talk about these temporary surrenders, this repeating process that we shouldn't be discouraged by or see as problematic. So, with that, we're going to jump in here in just a second. I did write an article about this called Temporary Surrenders in this issue of the magazine. You can go over to www.holysurrender.com to order your copy today if you're just trying it out, or to subscribe annually for $60, which supports what we're doing here on the podcast, as well as other things that we do. Or if you like to get your magazine digitally, head over to our Etsy shop, all of which are linked below. And lastly, but not leastly, this podcast is sponsored by Nap Ministries. You can donate, get involved, and learn what they're all about over at www.napministries.com. Okay, surrender is a repeating process / temporary surrenders. These tie in very importantly because sometimes we surrender repeatedly because we haven't quite gotten it yet. We haven't quite succeeded in giving it to God. And so he continuously gives us opportunities to surrender. And I've talked about that before. So I just want to wrap that up with a big bow and say I'm not discarding that, because it's true. We definitely have these really big things that we need to give him, and he takes his sweet time allowing us to make mistakes, guiding us through it, being a loving father, all the good things that God does for us. And then we have these temporary surrenders. And I wanted to bring it up because I'm experiencing this now. Because sometimes the only reason you shouldn't do it is because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Okay? Some things are not bad on their face. For example, there is nothing wrong with having a smartwatch. There's nothing wrong with drinking caffeine. But those are things that God asked me not to do, and then it was only for a season. So, I wrote an article several issues back about surrendering my smartwatch because it was a distraction and it was a problem. Well, then fairly recently, I needed something to help me track some health markers that I've been struggling with, and so I brought the smartwatch back. But my interactions with it are very different than when before I gave it to God. Because before I gave it to God, it was an itch I couldn't scratch because I could hear the dinging. It was subconscious. I was looking at it all the time, messages, everything else, and that distracted me from my children. It made me really attached to my phone, or made me feel like I needed it or needed to be needed every second of the day. But now I can detach from those things. I don't really care or look at it. I've removed most of those notifications that I had before because really all I care about is making sure I have these health metrics that I can track until my body kind of gets back on track, and to help me with some other things. But that was for a season, and I can almost guarantee you there will probably be another season where I put the smartwatch away and I wear my normal digital watch that doesn't do anything fancy. Because again, it's about whether or not your interaction with an emotion, an object, a concept, or whatever is standing in the way of God's plan for you. Because at the end of the day, a lot of things are just things. This pencil is just a pencil. If I use this pencil to write, then I'm using the pencil for its purpose, detached from me. If I took this pencil and I tried to poke out my computer screen, or I scribbled over the walls, or I did something that is outside of its proper usage, then it becomes a problem. But the pencil itself is not the problem. It's my interaction with the object that makes it a problem. And that's what these temporary surrenders can show us, is that some things are just objectively things. Emotions are objectively emotions. They are influenced by our interactions with them. The Lord has been working on anger with me for a long time, and He's been showing me where it's influenced by my own insecurities, where it's influenced by food, where it's influenced by these rules I've created in my head of how things should be or what they should look like. All sorts of things. But none of them really make anger different, other than how I'm responding to an emotion and not taking it captive and giving it back to God. I'm instead reacting from it, and that is becoming the problem, is how I'm allowing it to change my perspective, or how I'm using it as a crutch so I don't have to deal with the things internally. The other temporary surrender has been caffeine, where I don't need caffeine anymore. Prior to breaking myself of my caffeine addiction, it was the thing that helped me function. I needed it to do certain things, but I started to realize that the crashes influenced my anger, or if I was having a bad day or a rough circumstance or a certain emotion, the first thing I told myself that I needed, the first thing I craved, was caffeine, and not God. I couldn't sit down and say, oh Lord, this has been a rough hour with the kids. I'm just giving it all to you today. Or Lord, I just feel like I cannot get this work done. Whatever it was, I would just go, oh man, I need some caffeine. And that was my immediate reaction. That is not rightly ordered. So these temporary surrenders, this surrender being a repeating process, is just acknowledging the fact that God is going to take you in and out of seasons of surrender, just like He takes you in and out of fasting from things, which is part of this surrender. But it's not going to be, I never drink caffeine again. If I do, I haven't surrendered it. That's a very legalistic, almost fear-driven way to think about it. It's truly about being sensitive to God and what He wants you to do, because if you think about it, sometimes we restrict things, right? Because we need to break our attachment from it. Whether we're eating less sugar, eating more protein, or whatever. And normally, if you're flipping your diet, I'm just going to use this example. If you're completely flipping your nutrition and overhauling it, and you get rid of all the sugar, etc., eventually you come face to face with it again. Eventually, sugar will work its way back into your life. Whether you go out to a restaurant, or somebody brings it home, or somebody offers you cookies or something. Whatever it is, you face this thing that you gave up, that you cut off completely again. And then what do you do when you're faced with it? This is a great way for you to tell, surrender is a repeating process. Am I in that stage where I haven't quite given it to God and I really haven't fully surrendered it? So we're still working through it piece by piece. Or assess and say, okay, is this a temporary surrender where it wasn't never eat sugar again ever for your whole life? It was, I'm going to take you in and out of seasons so long as it remains just an object, just a thing that you are detached from and that you are leaning on God for. So if someone brings you a batch of cookies and you have not been faced with sugar for X amount of time, how are you looking at it? Do you go, oh no, I can't have this. I gave this up. It's going to ruin my diet. It's going to ruin all my progress. I can't have sugar. Blah, 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 blah. Or can you look at this gift that your neighbor is giving you and say, I believe that God's blessing over my food is greater than my fear of falling back into sugar addiction. And you pray blessing over the food. You thank the neighbor wholeheartedly for bringing you this gift. And then you enjoy it and you're okay with it. That would be a sign that you are detached from it and it is a temporary surrender. Even if you have a cookie once a year and that's the only sugar you ever had, that would still be in its own way a temporary surrender. Really, the metric is your detachment from it, not so much how much you interact with it. Because I don't want to go out to coffee with a friend and reject a coffee because it has caffeine in it. Thankfully, most places will do decaf. But the point is, it's not about rejecting what's in front of you always, and therefore you have achieved surrender. It's about really taking it back to God and saying, okay, I'm going out to coffee with a friend. Your thoughts, Lord? And if he says, don't do the caffeine, don't do it. If he says, shouldn't be a problem, go for it. He really will lead you, that specifically, in your own life. So assess the things you've been surrendering, or the things that keep nagging at you that he might be saying, hey, we need to address this. Take that next step and just breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that it's a repeating process. So you might be giving up seasons of this or that, but there might be seasons of abundance, and that's okay. And there might be things that he says, no, really, I'm asking you to give this up, to draw the line on it forever. And that's okay too. But God is going to lead you, because this is a repeated process, and there's no reason to beat ourselves up if we are presented with something that we have surrendered. All we need to do is go back to God and say, okay, this person invited me to have caffeine. I've been offered this deal for a smartwatch upgrade. Should I take it? Take all those things to God first, and he's going to lead you down the right path. And even if you choose otherwise, he's going to use it for your good to help you understand who he is, how he works, and how much he loves you in it. So, surrender is a repeating process, and there are such things as temporary surrenders, and those are okay. And there are certain things that we will be fighting to surrender for the rest of our lives, and that is okay too. I hope this episode was helpful and that it resonated with you. I am praying for you and that thing that you are surrendering, or the multiple things, and I will catch you next time.